Hello, hello. Here to talk about a little Ice Shot Witch Hunter that I have cooked up here. I previously played the crossbow. Just kind of wanted to give a little build update and status. Where I would consider this character is, you know, the beginning of the end. What do I mean by that is, we're level 95. The skill tree is probably where it is going to be, give or take a few points. Little optimizations or changes. The gear doesn't get a lot better without getting into 100 of Divine territory for the most part. I mean, there's probably a few pieces here that I could swap around, especially my necklace, but again, it's getting into the extremely expensive range, not just like, I don't really consider at this point in the league, which is a few months, like 50D item. That's really not that expensive. You can make that in, you know, 10 maps easily. And that's not even selling. That's just, you get an Omen of Light, you get a Cranium, you get maybe like 5 Raw D. Um, you know, it, it's really not too difficult at this point. The price of divines are just inflated at this point. So anyways, I thought it was a good time to take a little timestamp on what I've learned and just go over the build. I'm going to start with the skills because that's maybe the easiest to talk about and kind of get your head around. So this is Ice Shot. It's Freezing Arrow, applies freeze build up. It's pretty simple. It's like the simplest ice bow ability. Um, Nothing too exciting here. We're like elemental armaments. This ice bite, I'm actually just trying. I'm not loving it actually, so I might swap that out. But when I say beginning of the end, so I got Rakiata's flow now, and that's big because that lets you completely change your talents or your passive tree so that you don't need penetration because you always want to be floating around that 30 to 40% range without it. I am using Mana Leech on it as well. Okay, so Tornado Shot. So what Tornado Shot does is you put it on the ground, you hit it with an arrow, and it splinters them. So it's kind of like a supporting skill, and it just helps clear out packs, and you can see all the arrows going everywhere. It is interesting because it pretty much gets worse with the multi-arrow thing that I have going on as part of a sub-theme of the build. We use Barrage, so Barrage is definitely benefits from multi-arrows, so it repeats. You can see how many arrows get sent out there. It would be 15 right there, as far as I'm aware. So that's a lot of damage when each one is sheet doing 23k. So easily in the range of 300k on a click. And that's not getting into it. Then that's just sheet, right? There's a lot more factors than that. Freezing Mark. Freezing Mark is important. It lets you hit enemies that have bigger HP pools and freeze them a lot more quickly so that we can get the Snipe out. Snipe does more damage versus frozen targets, so typically the rotation is like, you put on a Tornado Shot, a Freezing Mark, you shoot them a little bit, they get frozen, then you snipe and they should die. And especially when we have all of these arrows, like that gets really deadly. And you don't have to be super accurate either because you have like basically a cone, so that's nice too. So for spirits, we got Wind Dancer, Mirage Archer, Herald of Ice, Combat Frenzy. Combat Frenzy, when I freeze, we get the frenzy charges. The frenzy charges let me use more barrages. Herald of Ice, no explanation there. Mirage Archer, pretty much no explanation there. If you don't know, it's almost a reason, to go a bow build. It's that strong. You could probably just Mirage Archer solo a lot of maps. And Wind Dancer is a typical evasion defensive layer. The passive skill tree. So our ascendancies is no surprise, sorcery ward. It's the reason why we're a witch hunter. So right now my sorcery ward is 6,900. That's with the Wind Dancer, so let's take that off. It's 55. So you might notice if you are looking really closely that I go to 55 really fast. It's because I can get, this is always annoying. I can take one big hit at 69, but then my max goes to 55. So that's basically like an HP pool, and you see it has a little timer. It's every 6 seconds about. It kind of gets reduced with levels and things like that, but it fully regenerates. So it's kind of like an energy shield that's ticking every 6 seconds if you don't take damage, or if it's at 0, it's always going. So incredible defensive layer. We do the Culling strike and Decimating strike. So Culling, if enemies below a threshold, and we do use that as part of the build with a unique item. And Decimating strike against full life enemies, remove between 5 and 30% of life before the hit is applied. This is awesome. This helps with Culling strike because it lowers their health immediately. So against like magic monsters. But also it's versus a boss. If you enter a boss room and you just take them for even 20%, like that's a lot. Obviously there's better bossing potential probably with the concentration route, and there's probably a little bit better clear with the Zealous Inquisition. But this is kind of the happy medium, and I really like the Culling strikes, so that's why I don't go down into the concentration. So as far as the build goes, basically we're just going to hit it through. We're going to get the important nodes kind of in this starting area. I really like, for example, hits against you have 20% reduced critical damage bonus here. You get some armor evasion, a little bit of attributes. Come up here, grab a little evasion, move speed. That's fine. We use these projectile damage. These aren't awesome, but I do use them because I don't have a lot of opportunities for straight damage nodes. There's a lot of like attack speed and crit, so I like having that initial little multiplier. We have some damage, evasion. This is a big draw of the build, and it's basically where the build gets a lot of its offense is damage with skills during a flask effect. So we use Lavianga's Spirit's Flask. We use this Crystal Elixir. Okay. We come over here, we're going to use Stimulant, so 16% attack speed during any flask effect, and then we imbue on Imbibed Power, which is 6% more attack speed and 25% more damage. So it's a huge amount, and this usually provides more than enough mana, especially when you go into the Act 4 reward that allows you to choose from the prison, that allows you to choose increased mana recovery or life, and you can do mana because we don't really use our life because we're sorcery ward, so that's super awesome. This is a big, very underrated node if you didn't know, I guess, so it's not underrated for most people, but if you didn't. 50% increase attack damage while moving, 5% penalty reduction too, and there's a little bit of the kind of same on here. You can see like my sheet on Ice Shot is 65 right now, and then when I move it goes to 75. And guess what? We're always moving in maps, so that one is really free, and it seems to multiply really favorably. Well, maybe it's just because it's 50%, right? I do use a Heart of the Well Diamond. I'm using a crit, extra damage cold, extra as lightning. We like the extra elemental damage. I haven't really messed around with this with a divine, but spamming, but I will one day. So we do use a weapon set, and it's to grab all of these mark abilities, which we apply just to freezing strike them, which is nice. It just adds just a whole bunch of like mark, speed use, skill effect, duration, yada yada. We're just making use of the weapon set because there isn't really a lot of other, with this build currently, there isn't a ton of reason to do it otherwise. Deflection, skill speed, move speed, elemental damage with attacks. We do use the quiver bonuses because we're no longer using Kaderos, because we're using 5 arrows that will kind of come into items. I'm just testing this out. I'm not sure if this is super worth, because it's probably about 10 skill points in total each way. It does let us go down into this Falcon technique, which is attack speed per dexterity. But we have a decent quiver, and I'm curious about it, so I'm gonna try it out. It seems to be good on paper. So maiming strike, more deflection. We grab this crit area, we grab the obvious stuff for evasion, bestial skin, and we come up and we snipe this, just elemental damage, increased chance to inflict ailments. These are probably the most flexible points, these 6. I'll probably be playing around with them, like for example we can go over here, but again we don't really need damage penetration or because we have Rakiata as an ice shot now. For gear, again, I'm kind of going for the surpassing chance for multiple arrows sub-theme, so I just made this bow. It's not awesome, but I'm just going to run it because it's a little bit better than my previous. So, you know, we have like bow attacks for additional arrow, we have a lot of surpassing chance for additional arrow, we have surpassing on the quiver, big fizz roll with attack speed, and over here on the quiver we have some added damage, percent damage with bows. We do have crit and attack speed base, so that's nice. So pretty standard. I mean, there's really nothing to say there, other than, you know, I think the surpassing chance for arrows is very underrated. You know, it might not look great on poe.ninja, but I think it's good. As far as your rings go, these are simple. Get your attacks, get your resistances. Hopefully you have mana leech on one. It's like, this ring honestly isn't awesome, but I'm pretty locked in on it because of the mana leech and the chaos res together. My necklace, this is not a plus skills necklace. I need spirit more than I need plus skills right now, and again, those are getting pretty expensive, so this is probably a pretty laughable piece, to be honest. You know, belt, nothing special. Boots, nothing special. Chest, nothing special. Spirit chest, high evasion, resistances. I guess it is worth talking about in my boot slot. For the rune, I'm using gain onslaught for 4 seconds when your marks activate. It's a good way for us to get onslaught, which is 20% skill speed and 10% move speed. And we can pop our mark quite often. And this is, it kind of helps too, because, you know, you'll pop your mark and then you'll just get a faster snipe as well, with that increased skill speed. Gloves, so we are using Horror's Flight and Grave Bracers. This is sweet because of, for one, we innately have Culling Strike from our Ascendancy, and we gain 1 Fear Incarnate when we call a target up to 20. Now, long story short, we don't even use the skill Crushing Fear, and the gloves actually aren't embarrassing. Otherwise, with, you know, attack speed, chaos damage to attacks. But what this does is this will say that every normal monster will get culled at 100% life, and magic monsters will get culled at something like 60%. So what it adds to your clear is basically that you're really only thinking about rares, especially when you are just spraying arrows, right? Every one of those, and especially when you use like Caderos, you know, I could use Caderos as well, but not with those quiver nodes, because then that would go to waste. But again, that would maybe open up those, so that's kind of where I'm deciding between right now. And lastly, Decree of Acuity, Ancient Visor. So you are blind, the effective blind is reversed, so that's evasion and accuracy. Gives us a truckload of armor with gain 20% of evasion rating as extra armor. It has good hybrid armor and evasion on it. So, you know, we're at 67% evasion, 49% armor. That just leads to even more sorcery ward. If I take this off, hopefully that doesn't mess up my dex. Yeah. So we're at 18% armor, 67 evasion. That brings us all the way to 49 with a single piece. We do have the plate belt too, which is a double armor roll. So if you're ever in the business of picking up some armor and you're an evasion character, this is amazing. Amazing way to do it. And especially when you're, look at that, 3,500 sorcery ward without that thing. That is crazy. If I could get it back on now. The sorcery ward is so buggy. Not buggy, but just sometimes it's weird about when it activates or not. that's kind of the highlights. Again, I just put on Rakiatas, so I'm kind of deciding what to do on Ice Shot still. I think for this we might just throw on, I don't know, what does Cold Attunement do? It doesn't really add much damage. Let's just be conservative and throw on Fork. Maybe Chain would be better too, I don't know. I think Fork is pretty cool. So I'm just going to use that, especially since we're not using Kaderos. And now we're just going to hit a map, so might kind of lock in. I'll keep commentary a little minimum. I have got a fun map here. Currency fountains replaced with rare varieties. Kind of handpicked some tablets, made a T16, so let's see how it looks. Maybe you'll get a little feel of how it goes. And as we kind of build up our call too, like these first packs are even weaker, harder to do.
One down. Who's next?
But it gets to be so indiscriminate. I'm not even using my freezing mark and stuff. So we got a rogue exile somewhere, I believe. And showcase the kind of freezing mark barrage rotation. Oh yeah, something I didn't mention that's really important in my opinion for the Witch Hunter is using a flask that has applies recovery instantly. Because your life is so low, like when you need health, you need to get health fast. And really there's just nothing that does it like that. Oh, here she is. Yeah, I didn't even, just too little health to actually that's sweet. Get Heart of the Well. Sorry, easy to get distracted in here. Like right now, you're kind of taking like, boom, just give me some health. And hopefully, you can get your sorcery ward back online. I hate these Aminamu's Void. They really need to fix that. Oh, okay. So far, pretty underwhelming little currency map here.
So, today's finally the day.
We'll test out the barrage. Oh, I think I missed a little bit. Whatever, it's pretty sweet. Oh, we've probably took a temp chains or two. I didn't even realize. My other character has a 50% reduced effective curses, and like temp chains also just kind of barely affects it because it's supporting fire. So I've been pretty lazy about dodging curses, which isn't good. Oh no, of all runes? That's boring. I'll do that last and shut off the video.
Simple enough.
You can kind of see the power there on the call is just like, gets to be really ridiculous. Especially when your Mirage Archer can just do it for you. See it right there. That's why we have instant life regen, because just for whatever reason you just take some life damage, whether it be from ignites or poison. I didn't talk about that much actually, but I am using a Megalomaniac to socket in the notable that's called Tolerant Equipment, which, depending on whether or not you have more armor or evasion, it makes you immune to poison or bleed. And because Decree of Acuity typically has more armor, you're going to be immune to bleed. So that's one way we mitigate that. You know, and then we use an Ignite Charm as well. Just of a barrage here.
Another notch on the armor.
I don't think I even got that off right. The barrage is really funny on like breaches or abysses that are fresh, and you can just blow up the whole thing. Especially if you got a tornado on, like just before. Just like that's kind of your typical rotation. The freezing mark is something like that buff that it gives you for doing freezing a target lasts 20 seconds. So, not to mention we get onslaught. So it's definitely something like keep it in the rotation. If you can be good about using it on rares, you can see there we have onslaught right now. Like it really does add a lot of damage. It looks like there's a little bit left on this map with rituals and stuff, and in Abyssal Depths and Vol Runes, but I'm just going to go to the boss and we'll call it on the video. Just a little showcase of the DPS. So we just get the freeze. Oh, I think I missed that. Oh well. Oh well, that's a lot slower than it should have been. So you got to get the perfect timing on the snipe for the big bonuses. But you can see we're pretty tanky. Damage looks really good. AoE looks good. Single target looks pretty good. There's definitely going to be weaknesses to the build. I would say first and foremost, getting up to, how do I say this?
Need more mana.
There's definitely like a threshold of gearing Sorcery Ward until it feels good. Like when you just have 1,000, it's not realistic. Like, and you'll probably have a little bit more than 1,000, but the lower numbers of Sorcery Ward are frustrating because you're at a point where you're still using your life a little bit. You know, especially campaign is like the perfect example, but I don't really want to say campaign because, you know, this is more focused on the maps build, but your Sorcery Ward will only do so much. So until you start getting that, you know, like 3,000-4,000 where you can really count on that to be your sole layer of defense, it can be challenging. So you really just kind of have to go for it. Same thing with getting gear. It's like, you know, you want the high armor evasion, but you also, you know, want your spirit here. You know, but that everyone kind of has that problem, so it might not even be worth like saying it's like about negative. I think gearing is super easy. To be honest, the Decree of Acuity and like these unique gloves are just nice to have. So otherwise, it's just rares. You know, you can putrefy your rings. You just need Amulet with Spirit, probably. You know, it's like that's probably just fine to do. yeah, and I think it's a lot of fun. It's simple. There are a good amount of buttons, and I think it's at a pretty good spot. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you learned something, maybe got some inspiration. Peace.